Hi, I'm Mike Steger. I'm a copyright, trademark, and entertainment lawyer. Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a running joke that if there was actually a nuclear holocaust, the only two forms of life that would survive would be cockroaches and Keith Richards. I recently reread Keith's memoir, Life, and today I'm going to talk about three business lessons that I learned from Keith Richards. The first lesson that I learned from the book is practice, practice, practice. We've all heard the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour rule. And in the book, Richards talks about how in the early days of the Rolling Stones, he lived with Mick Jagger and Brian Jones in a squalid flat, and they spent all their time practicing music or scrounging around trying to find food. He also talks about the first 3 years that the band was together, that they played at least 1,000 live shows during those 3 years. And sometimes they even play 3 shows in a single day. So that's the first lesson I learned. The second lesson that he brings out in the book is you need to spend money to make money. He talks about in the early 70s, the Stones' finances had been mismanaged. They were facing enormous tax bills in England, and members of the band took a couple of steps. Most of them moved out of England. They restructured their record contracts. They started releasing a lot of compilation albums of past recordings that were very lucrative. And they also restructured their finances and how they toured. And since they started doing that in the late 80s with the tours, they've been the most successful touring act of all time. And the third lesson that I learned that he brings out in the book is you always need a lawyer who has your back for your business. He talks about how the Stones, like almost every other successful group in the 60s and 70s, the Beatles, Bruce Springsteen, the Grateful Dead, Billy Joel, they had a horrible management agreement where they really got screwed by their manager. They eventually got out of that agreement by having to give up a lot of their rights to their early recordings. He also talks about how Johnny Johnson, who was the piano player for Chuck Berry on most of Chuck Berry's biggest hits, got no record royalties and no rights in the copyrights for all the work he did on those classic Chuck Berry recordings. Both of those examples show that if people had had a good lawyer when they entered into agreements, they really would have made out much better in the long run. So I'm Mike Steger. I'm a trademark, copyright, and entertainment lawyer. Keep on rocking. If you have any questions, give me a call.